At 6:40 on a Tuesday morning in Tulsa, Oklahoma, before she's even out of her scrubs from the night shift, a hospital records clerk opens her phone and moves exactly $30 toward a credit card balance that used to keep her up at night. Not $35, not whatever's sitting in checking, 30. She's done this every single workday for 19 months. Same time, same amount, same silence. She's never posted about it, never mentioned it in the break room. Here's the part worth sitting with. This woman brings home $2,190 a month, which by most standard advice is barely enough to survive on, let alone aggressively pay down debt. And right now, she is 11 months from a number that used to feel permanent. $30. There's a rule folded inside that number. 3 moves, teachable, almost insultingly simple, and you'll have the whole thing by the end of this. But I want you to sit with the mystery a little first, because if I hand you the mechanics before you understand why they work, you'll do what almost everyone does with decent advice. Nod, agree, and never actually start. Call me Uncle Roku. And here's what should genuinely annoy you about most debt payoff content. It's written for people with room to maneuver. Throw every spare dollar at the highest interest balance. Spare dollars from where, exactly? When rent, the car, the insulin copay, and groceries have already taken their cut, every spare dollar is a number. And for a lot of people, that number is 0. The advice keeps assuming a surplus that was never actually there, and then treats it as a personal failing when the plan quietly dies in month 2. This isn't a small gap in the advice, it's the whole gap. Every payoff calculator, every finance influencer's spreadsheet template, every just be aggressive pep talk assumes you're starting from a stable floor with something left over at the end of the month. For a genuinely enormous number of people, that floor was never there to begin with, and no amount of motivation fixes a plan that was mathematically built for someone else's paycheck. So before any mechanics, the feeling, because it isn't a character flaw. If you've ever opened a debt calculator, typed in your real minimum payments and your real balance, watched it tell you paid off in 14 years, and closed the tab without saying anything to anyone, that wasn't laziness. That was a completely rational response to a plan that was never built around your actual paycheck. If you've started a payoff plan and watched it collapse by the second month twice, that's not 2 personal failures. That's a plan that wasn't tested against a life like yours. And the timing isn't neutral either. A large share of adults are currently carrying credit card balances at rates well above 20%. And for a meaningful chunk of households, income itself doesn't arrive in a smooth, predictable line. It swings month to month, sometimes by a lot. A slightly shorter pay period here, a schedule cut there, and the plan that looked reasonable on paper stops matching the actual month. Any payoff plan built on the assumption of a calm, steady surplus was quietly written for somebody else's paycheck, not yours. I want to be specific about what that actually feels like from the inside, because it's rarely described honestly. It's the quiet math you do in your head at a checkout line before you know whether the card will even go through. It's opening an app you already know the answer to, just to confirm the bad feeling. It's the specific private exhaustion of being disciplined and responsible and still watching a number barely move month after month. That feeling is not evidence that you're bad with money. It's evidence that the tool you were handed was never sized correctly for the job.
Which brings us to Tulsa. Her name, for our purposes, is Camille. 34, hospital records clerk, 7 years in. Take home $2,190 a month, paid every other week. 19 months ago, her financial life had a specific texture, not chaos exactly, precision. Every dollar already spoken for before it landed. A credit card balance that had quietly grown to $6,800 at a rate she didn't like thinking about, from a stretch of bad months 2 years back that she'd never fully climbed out of. A car repair here, a dental emergency there, the kind of ordinary bad luck that doesn't feel dramatic in the moment, but adds up into something that follows you for years. One night, working out whether a $40 copay would fit before payday, she did the math 3 times, hoping for a different answer. It didn't change. That was the night she said the thing out loud to herself, alone in her kitchen. At this rate, she'd be paying for a decision she barely remembered making for another decade. Not because she was careless, because nobody had ever handed her a version of Pay Off Your Debt that actually fit a $2,190 paycheck with genuinely nothing extra floating around most months. She'd tried twice before, both times with a version of the advice everyone gives: pick an aggressive number, commit hard, don't look back. Both times, the plan lasted a couple of good months and then quietly died the first time something ordinary went wrong. She didn't think of herself as someone who quits things, but 2 failed attempts in a row does something to how you talk to yourself. And by the time she sat down that 3rd night, she wasn't looking for another aggressive plan. She was looking for something that wouldn't break the first time life did something normal and inconvenient.
Now, the rule, it didn't come from an app or a financial planner. It came from her older brother, who spent 26 years doing framing work on houses before his knees gave out. Camille once asked him how he didn't lose his mind looking at an entire house that wasn't built yet. Beams, walls, a roof, 100 decisions stacked on top of each other before anyone could even move in. He looked at her like it was a strange question and said, "I've never framed a house. I've framed the next wall." He didn't think about the house. The house wasn't his problem that day. His problem was one wall, square and true, and then the next one. 26 years of that. And behind him, more houses than he could count. Entire neighborhoods, if you added it all up, built one wall at a time by someone who genuinely never once thought about the whole project while he was standing in the middle of it. Camille went home from that conversation and asked herself the question that built everything that follows. What's my wall? Not, how do I pay off $6,800? That number was the house, too big to hold in her head in any way that produced action instead of dread. The real question was smaller and more useful. What's the one unit small enough that I can actually do it today and tomorrow and the day after without needing a burst of motivation I might not have on a Tuesday in February? Here's why that question does more work than any calculator. Her 2 failed attempts before this had the identical shape, a huge number at the far end and a demanding monthly figure in the middle. Pay $400 a month, clear the balance in 17 months. There's a well-documented behavioral pattern behind why that structure fails so often. People don't experience money as one single pool. It gets mentally sorted into separate buckets, and a distant, enormous goal gets treated completely differently than a small action available right now. The big number doesn't motivate anybody. It just sits there, and every month you glance up at it from wherever you actually are, and the gap does all the talking. $6,800 minus one $400 payment is still functionally a mountain. Your brain doesn't experience that as progress. It experiences it as still basically where I started. And that feeling, not the actual math, is what makes people quit. Big plans don't usually die from bad math. They die from the view. Camille's first 2 attempts both failed at almost exactly the same point, the moment where the remaining number still felt enormous despite real, genuine effort already having gone into it.
So here's the rule she built. 3 moves. I'll name them now, then walk through each one properly. Move 1. The plank. A plank is $30, and a plank is the only unit her debt payoff is allowed to exist in. Not $6,800, not 17 months. She sat down, found her real number, the full balance plus a conservative estimate of interest if she moved at a strict $30 a workday pace, and divided by 30. She wrote the countdown exactly once, then put it away and never looked at that total again. Every workday morning before her shift, 1 plank, $30, moves automatically. The discipline happened once, on the day she set up the transfer. After that, the system does the mornings. She doesn't have to feel motivated at 6:40 a.m. She just has to have set it up correctly one time, months ago. Move 2. The conversion. This is the actual engine, and it's the part almost everyone misses. The daily plank is just the heartbeat, small, steady, reliable, boring on purpose. The real progress happens when money gets freed or found. And under this rule, money gets freed doesn't get absorbed back into the month. It converts immediately into extra planks. Camille canceled 2 subscriptions she'd forgotten she still had. $23 a month, freed permanently, converted the same day every month automatically. A small tax refund landed, $860, and instead of letting it drift into fun money, the way windfalls tend to evaporate twice as fast as earned income, because it never felt fully real to begin with, she gave herself a 24-hour capture window. Within a day, that refund became roughly 28 extra planks, laid and gone from temptation's reach before she could talk herself into anything else. A coworker paid her $60 she genuinely forgot was owed. 2 planks, same day. None of these individually felt significant. Stacked together over a year and a half, they roughly doubled her pace without ever requiring a single dramatic decision. Move 3. The ceiling. The strange one, and the one that saves the plan around month 6, when the first real test shows up. Under this rule, she was never allowed to make a payoff decision bigger than $30 at once. No, I'll throw in $300 this month, I'm feeling good about it, because the same burst of ambition that puts in $300 on a strong month is exactly the ambition that quits completely on a bad one. It's the same pattern, just pointed in the opposite direction. The ceiling keeps the whole thing boring on purpose, because boring is what survives a bad month. On the months something breaks and there's no room for extra planks at all, and for Camille there were 3 of those months across the 19. Here's what this structure does that a percentage plan can't. Nothing collapses. A percentage plan misses a month and dies of something close to shame, because missing the target feels like proof the whole thing was a mistake. A plank wall just waits. It doesn't judge. It's exactly as tall as it was, and the next plank is still $30, same as always, whenever she's ready for it.
Now, the honest objection, because it deserves a straight answer instead of a dodge, $30 a day is barely anything. At that pace, this takes forever. Both halves of that are true and worth saying plainly instead of dancing around. At Camille's real pace, clearing the full balance, including realistic interest, lands right around 19 months from her start date. That's not nothing. 19 months is a real stretch of time, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But here's what the objection misses, and it's the entire reason this structure exists. A debt payoff plan doesn't have to be finished to be working. Camille's balance dropped below $5,000, a real, felt milestone, by month 6. That's the month the late-night recalculating stopped, the month she stopped doing math at the kitchen table, hoping for a different answer. By month 14, the balance was under $2,000, and the specific dread that used to live in her card statement had nowhere left to sit. The finish line matters, but the relief doesn't wait for the finish line. It shows up in pieces, months before the number hits 0, the same way a wall provides shelter well before the roof goes on.
Camille had a coworker. Call her Devin. Same department, similar years in, take home within about $30 a month of Camille's. Kept nearly identical on purpose, because the actual difference between these two isn't income, and I want that to be completely unambiguous. They talked about their card balances on a break one afternoon, and both started the same week, sitting at the same table, with genuinely similar balances and genuinely similar intentions. Devin did what most advice suggests, picked the ambitious number, $350 a month, attacked it hard. For 2 months, it worked, and it felt genuinely great, the way a new plan always does at the start. Month 3, her hours got cut slightly. Nothing dramatic, just a normal fluctuation. The payment slipped. Month 4, catching up meant finding $700 at once, and the math simply didn't work. She quietly stopped. No announcement, just a transfer that stopped happening, the way these things usually end, without a dramatic decision, just a quiet absence. She's restarted twice since, both times with the same aggressive number, both times ending the same way. Her balance this week is almost exactly what it was 19 months ago. Camille's decision on that same break looked small, $30 small, almost embarrassingly modest next to Devin's confident $350. It wasn't small. It was the only one of the two plans actually built to survive an ordinary bad month, and ordinary bad months are the only kind most people's lives reliably produce.
2 honest edges before wrapping up, because a plan like this deserves real boundaries, not a pretense that it fixes everything for everyone. First, if your income genuinely sits below your baseline expenses before any plank exists at all, if the math is underwater before you've spent a single dollar on debt, this rule is not a shame tool, and paying debt down isn't the first move. Income is. Whatever that actually takes to address, whether that's benefits you're owed, hours, a rate conversation, or something bigger. Pretending a payoff habit fixes an income gap would be exactly the kind of advice worth being skeptical of, and I'd rather tell you that plainly than pretend $30 a day solves a problem it was never built to solve. Second, which balance gets the planks first matters. If you're carrying more than one debt, the highest rate balance gets every plank until it's gone. Then the next one inherits the full pace. The plank count resets for the new balance, but the habit itself doesn't reset at all. It just keeps going, pointed at whatever's next.
Tonight, 3 moves if you want to start. Find your real number. Full balance plus a realistic estimate of interest at your pace. Divide by 30. Write it down once and put it away. You're not allowed to look at that total again. That's the ceiling doing its job from day 1. Set the automated transfer before you sleep tonight, first transaction of the day, before willpower gets a vote. And start your conversion list. Every subscription, every forgotten fee, every bit of found money from this day forward gets a 24-hour destination, no exceptions.
I'm not a financial advisor, and this isn't financial advice, just a pattern worth understanding, built by someone who needed it to actually survive contact with a real paycheck. One more time. 6:40 on a Tuesday in Tulsa, a woman moves $30 before her coffee's even done and tells no one. Not a payment, a wall, built one plank at a time, with more finished than she thinks about most days. You don't pay off a year of debt, you lay a plank. And the best morning to lay the first one is the one you wake up to next. If this changed how you're thinking about a balance you've been avoiding, tell me your plank count in the comments. The honest one, not the fantasy one. I actually read them.